This is the full story of the Fort Hagen satellite array and Hangar. This is part 2 of our series about the lore of the Automatron DLC. In our last video, we explored the General Atomics factory to retrieve a part to deliver to Ada to help track down the Mechanist. You can rewatch that video here. Once you retrieve the Mechanist device, go back to Ada to give it to her.
Were you able to find anything at General Atomics?
I found this strange device on a robot.
Let's have a look. Impressive technology. If my analysis is correct, this is a specialized radar beacon. I suspect it's how the Mechanist was keeping track of the robo-brain you destroyed. As the next logical step, I need you to install this beacon within me so we can use it to our advantage. Once I'm in the robot workbench, just install the radar beacon and I'll do the rest.
To install the radar beacon, create a robot workbench in one of your settlements and then load Ada into the workbench. You'll find the radar beacon as a special mod, which you can then attach to Ada.
A moment. The modification was successful. New hardware has been detected and software is updating. And installation complete. Analyzing Mechanist hardware. The radar beacon is receiving a strong encrypted signal, but I can't determine the source. With some additional assistance, I should be able to decrypt the signal and locate the Mechanist. Fortunately, I'm detecting another robo-brain in the Commonwealth that's receiving the same signal. The encryption on the source signal is complex, but not beyond solving. If you can bring me 2 additional beacons, they should provide the keys and algorithms that I need to enhance my decryption routines.
Looks like it's robo-brain season.
At least until our mission is complete.
So we need to find 2 more beacons. Our hunt for the first sends us north of Andrews Station. As we approach the wicked shipping truck, we get attacked by a group of Mechanist robots. On the ruins of a robo-brain, we find a radar beacon.
Here you go, Ada. One slightly dented but still functional radar beacon.
This will do nicely. And, with any luck, it'll help us trace the Mechanist signal. Each robo-brain's radar beacon has unique encryption so that it can't be traced back to the source. However, acquiring 2 additional beacons should provide me with enough data to break the code. So if my theory is correct, this beacon will help us trace the Mechanist signal. I'm going to begin my decryption routine, but it could take a while. In the meantime, I've picked up another robo-brain beacon signal. The signal is coming from... Oh, this isn't good. Location confirmed. The robo-brain is at Fort Hagen satellite array, which means it's in the hands of the Rust Devils.
Doesn't sound like anything a little lemon juice and some steel wool couldn't fix.
It's going to take something a bit stronger to overcome these foes. My old caravan encountered them once while crossing the river into the city. The Rust Devils are a group of ruthless raiders who utilize robots for their nefarious practices. They scour the Commonwealth looking for my kind. What they can't capture and reprogram, they strip for spare parts.
Rust Devils? Fort Hagen satellite array? Well, we know where Fort Hagen is. That's where we had to confront Kellogg. Heading there, we travel west until we reach the Fort Hagen satellite array. We find the array swarming with Rust Devils and robots. The array is also protected by traps and tripwires. Clearing them out can be a tough fight.
We may have here. Over here. That's the last of them.
Now the quest marker brings us to the base of one of the satellite dishes. The hatch we need is locked behind a security gate, and be careful not to confuse this hatch with the other one we find at the base of the southwestern satellite dish. This hatch leads you to a military bunker, and it's part of one of the Relay Tower miscellaneous quests. Now the one we want is at the other satellite dish, and in order to unlock the gate we have to climb the scaffolding and go through the radar structures until we cross a shack bridge to reach a terminal. terminal. In the terminal, we find two options. The first is a note called Lookout Duty. Here we learn that the leader of this raider gang is named Ivy. Looks like Ada and other settlers are not the only ones suffering from mechanist attacks. The mechanist robots have become a nuisance even for this group of Rust Devils. Ivy has placed Lockjaw in charge of security outside the bunker, and she tells Lockjaw that there need to be at least 2 living, breathing human raiders guarding the entrance to the hangar. Ivy is not comfortable leaving security just to the robots. The next option allows you to unlock the hatch at the base of this satellite dish. Once done, you can hop on down and access the hatch to enter the hangar. Upon entry, we wind down a staircase to find a series of laser tripwires on the ground connected to Assaultron laser traps. There's a locked caged door against the eastern wall, but there's no terminal or way to access it. This forces us to go through the western door. Rounding the corner, we find our first pocket of resistance.
Careful, sir. I don't think we're alone.
Heading through the eastern door leads us to the first hangar, which is heavily defended.
We may have an enemy nearby. Picking up something. Found you! Not much of a threat after all. May have some trouble.
Once the robots and Rust Devils are dealt with, we can head through the right door to enter the pre-war infirmary. Here we find a few minor chems. Back out into the hangar, we can continue exploring, and we notice very large pre-war tanks. The first thing that comes to my mind is how on earth could they have gotten these tanks in here? The only entry and exit for this hangar is the small little hatch that we found at the base of the satellite dish. And yet this is a huge installation. How did they get these tanks in and out? I suppose there could have been another entrance that we don't know about, maybe one that was a little lower, down the hillside, on level ground, and perhaps the Earth has moved since the bombs dropped, burying those doors. On the southern side of the wall, we find 2 power armor repair stations. These are going to be important if you're a power armor build, because your power armor is going to get pretty banged up while exploring this hangar. The Rust Devils have moved in. We find a variety of elevated shacks and platforms where the raiders would sleep and pass their time. There are plenty of raider decorations, including mannequins and big bags of robot scrap parts. Against the northern wall, we find an expert-locked caged door. And it's an expert lock for a reason, because inside we find a full suit of XO1 Mark III power armor. This, I believe, is a leveled suit, so it's only going to be an XO1 suit if you show up at a higher level. Underneath the north stairs is another locked security gate. Inside, all we find is a tool chest. And then heading up the stairs into the nearby room, we find 2 pre-war skeletons lying on the floor. Both are in military uniforms, so it's clear that these were soldiers. One is next to a knocked-over water cooler, and he has a glass in his hand. Looks like this poor fellow died trying to get a glass of water from the water cooler. And the other is slumped over a metal table with a 10mm pistol near his hand. Heading down the stairs, we find ourselves in a storage room. Strangely enough, they have big barrels of nuclear waste here. We find a hazmat suit near the nuclear barrels, and then the expert-locked southern door leads back to that small room where we found the leveled suit of power armor. On the floor near the door, we find a skeleton holding a bottle of Radex and wearing a gas mask. And inside one of the crates, we find an interesting little scene. A parent teddy bear is reading a bedtime story to a smaller baby teddy bear. The box has been decorated to look like a room, complete with a pillow, a bedside lamp, and the picture of a dog on the wall. Here we also find a Vault-Tec lunchbox. I guess we are to assume that if this was done by raiders, at least some of them have wholesome senses of humor. Heading through the western door, we come out into a very large chamber, but we don't find any enemies. Down the steps, we find an interesting scene with 3 mannequins, one of whom is trying to get water out of a faucet on the wall, and the other is pushing a Jangles the Moon Monkey around in a wheelchair. These raiders sure do love their mannequins. Another one is listening to the radio wearing an army helmet, and we find the skeletons of 2 service members lying next to a dumpster. This must have been the primary workshop for these Rust Devils. We find a slew of robot parts out on tables being worked on. The Protectron charging stations are filled with all sorts of standing robots, and there are plenty of weapon and armor workbenches in this room. We find a whole bunch of Protectron charging stations in this room, lining nearly every every wall. Most of these, however, are empty, and so I guess we're supposed to assume that most of the robots the Rust Devils have made are out on patrol right now. The first thing we need to do is head northwest and open this cage lying in the middle of the floor. Here we've got a Mechanist iBot playing the very loud Mechanist recording in a never-ending loop. This is going to drive us crazy unless we destroy this robot. Heading back and down the east hallway, we find even more of these Protectron charging stations, and jumping on up to the top floor, we find a missile launcher with 2 missiles and a bottle cap mine. These are not here by accident. A missile launcher may come in handy for the upcoming battle. Heading back along the catwalk and turning right, we find a stash of caps next to 3 Carlisle typewriters and a human skull. Not sure if this is a reference to a movie or not. And we also hear classical music playing in this room, but it's hard to find its source. I managed to find it by going down to the main floor and looking behind an armor workbench. Underneath the ramp behind where we find the RoboBrain is a jukebox, playing classical music, either to torment the RoboBrain or maybe to soothe it. It's also hard to turn it off. I had to turn off clipping using the console just to get underneath to turn off the music. With the rest of the room explored, we can go back to the cage. Here on the table, we find a holotape called Jezebel's Interview.
All right, Brainbox. Ivy wants me to find out what makes you tick. So let's get started.
There's no need for that. I'm certain we can discuss this rather unfortunate situation before it gets completely out of hand. Now, what exactly did this Ivy tell you to do?
Simple. She wants me to crack open that dome you have for a head and find out how your brain is connected to your circuits.
Perhaps I can be of assistance in that regard. After all, there isn't much else I can do now that you remove my head from its chassis. How about we forge some sort of an accord, just between the two of us?
What the hell is an accord? You talking about wires or something?
Right. I need to phrase this so even a dullard like you would understand. Let me put it this way. You need information that's going to make your boss happy. I want to keep my brain in one piece. Maybe we can cut a deal.
Fine. I'm listening.
I'll tell you everything I know about my own construction. All the bits that Ivy wants to hear. And I promise you, she won't be disappointed. In return, you keep those tools away from me and put me back onto my body. You get what you want, and I don't get dissected like some kind of a laboratory experiment. Do we have a deal?
Well, that would save me a lot of time. And Ivy doesn't like waiting. Tell you what, you start talking, and I'll stop drilling. After I tell Ivy everything, we'll see how happy she really gets. But I think I'm gonna leave your head in that machine for now, just in case you decide to get any smart ideas. How's that for a deal?
I suppose it will have to suffice. I mean, yeah, it's a deal.
So it sounds like Ivy is trying to find the Mechanist as well, and she had the same idea we did to interrogate this RoboBrain. Heading back to the table where we found the holotape, we can take a look at the nearby terminal. This terminal has 3 different entries. The first, called Brain, shows us exactly how desperate Ivy is. She threatens Jagger to get information from Jezebel, the RoboBrain, by any means necessary, even if they are violent. It's no wonder that we heard on the holotape Jezebel trying to plead with this Jagger thug to not cause her any harm. In the next entry, called iBot, we learn that we're not the only ones annoyed by the repeating Mechanist recording on the iBot. Now that Jezebel has given information to Ivy, Ivy says that Jagger can go ahead and disassemble the iBot. They no longer need it. The third entry, named Schematics, gives us some sort of jumbled garbledygook. I don't believe this has any significance. We can't download a blueprint. We can't interact with this text, so I don't think it has any real purpose. At last, we can finally confront Jezebel the RoboBrain to get information about the Mechanist.
You don't look like one of the Rust Devils. What are you doing here?
What did the Rust Devils do to you?
They felt that by keeping my head online would prove useful to them. Fortunately for me, they're stupid enough to actually believe anything I say. Admittedly, it hasn't gotten me very far, but it has saved me from the same fate as my rather unfortunate comrades you see in pieces around you. Now, back to my original question. What are you doing here?
Maybe I'm just a rust devil wearing a clever disguise.
Please, don't insult my intelligence.
Getting ready to crack open that dome you call ahead to get your radar beacon.
My radar beacon? Now that's unexpected. That's a very specific part to be searching for, and you don't look like the typical part scavenger type to me. I calculate a 98.8% chance that you're looking for the Mechanist. If I'm correct, and I usually am, then perhaps we can help each other with our respective predicaments.
No reason to bargain when I can just take what I need.
You really think just because I'm connected to this machine, you have the upper hand? If you take a moment to listen, I'll explain precisely why you're wrong. Now, how can I put this as simple as possible so someone at your processing speed can understand? In order to find the Mechanist, you're going to need more than just my radar beacon. You're going to need access to the facility. I'm willing to provide said access, but you'll have to fulfill two simple conditions. 1, you need to get me as far away as you can from these lunatics. And 2, find me a new body. Once both conditions are satisfied, I'll gladly provide you with everything you need. Do we have a deal?
Deal.
A wise decision. Once we're at our destination, I'll happily relinquish my radar beacon as a gesture of good faith. Now, I strongly suggest you stop loitering in the middle of a hostile location and get us both out of here at once.
As soon as we finish talking, the sentry bot behind Jezebel, Ahab, wakes up. He immediately starts bathing you in fire, forcing you to react instantly.
Well, come on. Let's not wait around for more horrifying monstrosities.
On Ahab's body, we find the unique robot head mod, Sentry Ahab's Helm, which you can't find anywhere else in the game. Once Ahab is dead, we can go south to continue on our way.
Watch the tripwires. I'd rather keep myself intact today, thank you.
Oh, great. Now that Jezebel is in our inventory, sounds like we're going to have her clever wit as a constant companion. Here we find a bunch of laser tripwires. If you trigger one, fragmentation grenades will fall from the ceiling.
Watch it, you Claude.
This could totally blow off all of the limbs of your power armor, so it's best to disarm the lasers and avoid it. Heading into the next room, we find a bunch of fusion generators. This looks like a Rust Devil bedroom. We find a few chems on some of the beds, bags of fertilizer near to a chemistry workstation. Only one of the fusion generators has a fusion core inside, and against the northwestern wall, we find a gaming terminal. Inside, we find 2 notes. The first from Ivy says, "Read this." Looks like somebody reset all of the scores on this gaming terminal, and Ivy is upset. She makes the gaming terminal off limits until someone owns up to it. In the next entry, we find all of the scores, and just as she said, everything is AAA 0. I'm sure a few egos were bruised because of this. But what game is she talking about? Well, loaded in this terminal is a holotape named Automatron. This is a fun little game where you have to shoot robots. If they get too close, you die. So you just spin around in circles, shooting all of the Mr. Handies until you defeat enough to move on to the next level. Fun! You can eject the holotape to bring it with you and add to your game collection. In the corner next to this terminal is an advanced locked safe, and once looted you can pass through the southern door to reach Hangar number 2. Through the door we see some APCs, and we walk right into another intense gunfight.
Picking up something. Careful, sir. You're going to regret this. Hopefully, that's the last of them. Did you hear that? Lost, but not forgotten. That was amusingly simple. My apologies. I think I've lost them. That takes care of that.
Hacking the terminal against the southern wall opens a locked door, revealing 2 more power armor repair stations. Perfect timing for a power armor user like me. Heading back out, we find some elevated rooms to the right that have even more Rust Devils in them.
Are you injured, sir?
Once dead, we can finally explore this floor. The Rust Devils have erected a bunch of shanties, as typical. The first one looks like Ivy's personal home because it's in here where we find Ivy's terminal. Here we find 3 entries. The first, labeled Mechanist, reveals that the Mechanist's robots have seriously hampered the ability of these Rust Devils to salvage for robot parts. Because of this, Ivy makes finding the Mechanist their top priority. This is why they kidnapped Jezebel and interrogated her for information about the Mechanist. Morbidly, Ivy ends by saying that once they find and kill the Mechanist, she intends to make a robot out of his bones. The next entry, Pioneer Park Disaster, places an icon for the Robotics Pioneer Park on your map if you haven't been there already. Here we learn that Ivy and her Rust Devils had made a plan to go to the Robotics Pioneer Park to salvage those 4 Protectrons that do the performance on the stage. Only when they arrived, they got attacked by a group of Mechanist robots. Those robots awoke a nearby Deathclaw, and when all was said and done, Ivy lost 3 of her goons and 2 of her robots. It was here where they found Jezebel, whom they're going to use to try and find the Mechanist. The last entry, Ahab, tells us how that sentry bot we destroyed was made. One of Ivy's goons was killed by a Deathclaw. They managed to kill the Deathclaw, and they used the skull to create a custom head mod for their sentry robot. Here again, Ivy talks about using the bones of the Mechanist to make some nifty robot mod. What is it with Ivy and bones? Heading back out of the shack, we get attacked again by more Rust Devils from up above.
Enemies over here. Well done, sir.
How many of these things are there? Heading up the steps, we come to a large laser tripwire trap. Triggering any of these lasers will activate the Assaultron laser heads.
Are you trying to get us killed?
There are 2 traps here. The second one has an Assaultron laser trap pointed at some fuel canisters. So if you trip it, you're in for quite a boom. Heading up the stairs and into the next room, we find another robot workstation. Here we find robot parts on a work table, complete with robot parts suspended above. The nearby terminal doesn't do anything aside from activating or deactivating the attached turrets. Out the door and up the stairs, we pass through an eastern security gate, across a catwalk, through another gate into the next room.
Based on my limited experience with you, I estimate a 65% chance of making it out of here. Not optimal. An increase in effort could have an impact on the odds.
Jezebel's confidence in us is touching and overwhelming. This is a large storage room. There's really nothing of interest in here aside from a mannequin on the top shelf. Passing through the eastern security gate, we at last approach Ivy.
This is the one that ripped my head off. I demand we rip her head off. It's only fair.
Being careful to disarm the lasers, we crawl across the catwalk and into the room. Now we can be sneaky, or we can charge right in and start blowing things up. If you choose the latter option, be careful because you not only have to attack Ivy, but her personal guard robot, an Assaultron Gorgon.
Had I a body, I would have killed her myself. Oh well, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Good job, human.
Once Ivy is dead, you can loot her unique T-60 power armor. Unique power armor is rare in the game. You find most of it by siding with the Brotherhood of Steel, but on Ivy we find 3 unique pieces, a unique torso and both arms. These unique pieces are Tesla pieces, which increase your energy damage. The models are also unique, with big electricity coils on the shoulders and arms. On Ivy we also find a unique weapon called the Tesla rifle. This fires an electrical charge that shoots arcs of electricity between targets. You can mod this at a weapons workstation. You've seen me use this in my past videos as an automatic weapon. It's amazing for dealing with groups of enemies. Heading south out of this room, we come upon 2 more doors. Unlocking the left expert locked door reveals a fat man and 2 mini nukes. which is great news for a big weapons character like mine. The door to the right is unlocked, and inside we find a platform with the crumpled skeleton of a pre-war soldier lying next to a large steamer trunk. Inside the steamer trunk we find yet another unique weapon, the salvaged Assaultron head. You charge this weapon to fire lasers at the cost of exposing your player with large doses of radiation. And with that, you can use the terminal on the western wall to unlock the final security gate and head back up the steps to exit the hangar. Upon leaving, Jezebel addresses you.
Thank goodness we are out of that hole. Don't think your job is done. I refuse to cooperate until you provide a body that meets my standards.
She gave you the final radar beacon, and you can then turn to Ada to give it to her.
Here you go, Ada. The final radar beacon. I'll need that head back when you're done.
Of course. Shouldn't take but a moment. There you go. Still in one piece. I'm not sure why you want the head back. All we needed was its radar beacon. Besides, robo-brains are notorious for being, well, a real pain in the neck.
What else do you know about them, Ada?
Quite simply, it's the first time General Atomics produced a successful union between organic matter and robotics. The brain is used both as a control unit and a data storage unit, which is far more efficient than using standard circuits. Unfortunately, there were a lot of programming issues with these robots, which caused them to be a bit, shall we say, unhinged. Hopefully, this particular robo-brain will have some of the answers that we've been seeking.
A union of organic matter and robotics? Sounds an awful lot like a synth.
Not at all. The robo-brain was built with a very different design philosophy in mind. General Atomics' intent was to use the human brain to augment the robot's functions, primarily to accelerate the decision-making process. Free thought and individuality was never intended. These were expressly built like soldiers, to follow orders without question. The robo-brain's unfortunate tendency towards violence and aggression should be considered more of a malfunction than a calculated decision.
Now that you have the final radar beacon, will it be enough to track down the Mechanist's location?
I certainly hope so. I've already started the calculations while we've been having this conversation. That still doesn't explain why you need that head back.
We don't have a choice. It claims we need it to access the Mechanist's facility.
How foolish of me. It makes perfect sense that the Mechanist would not only keep its location a closely guarded secret, but would secure it against intrusion as well. I'm terribly sorry. I hadn't considered that possibility at all. I'm afraid when it comes to assisting humans, I'm not doing very well lately.
Don't be ridiculous. If it wasn't for you, we couldn't have gotten this far already.
That's kind of you to say. Ever since I let my friends die in that caravan, I feel like I've been failing in my duties. I chose the route we took the day we were attacked. Perhaps if I had selected an alternate route, they'd still be alive. Sometimes I wish that Jackson had programmed me with my personality mode set permanently to disabled.
Your personality defines you as an individual. Never let that go.
You're right. All of the good memories I've experienced being Ada would be lost if my personality mode was shut down. I can't afford to lose them. I really think I needed to hear that from someone else. Thank you. Now I've distracted you for long enough. I'll finish up my calculations while you deal with our new friend, Jezebel. Hopefully, she'll be able to grant us access to the Mechanist's facility and we can put an end to this nonsense once and for all.
Now that Jezebel has given us the final radar beacon, we next need to get from her the location of the Mechanist. To do so, we have to fulfill our promise to her by giving her a brand new body. Bringing Jezebel back to our robot workbench, we find her head as a unique headpiece. You can then build any robot as normal, and as long as you use Jezebel's head, you will complete the quest. But no matter what robot body you build for Jezebel, she is not pleased.
Interesting. This body you've selected for me isn't quite what I had envisioned, but it will have to suffice.
I risked my neck saving you, so a little more gratitude wouldn't hurt.
If the phrase "thank you" will allow us to get to conclude our bargain more rapidly, then I'm more than happy to utter it aloud on your behalf. Look, it's obvious we don't care for each other's company, which suits me just fine. So, why don't you ask me everything you wanted to know, and then I'll be on my way.
Why did General Atomics make you so uncooperative?
I haven't the faintest idea of what you're talking about. I am a top-of-the-line model, with an efficiency rating that makes Mr. Handy look like a glorified toaster oven. When given a set of instructions, I will complete them without question, and without error. Now, were there any other ridiculous questions you wanted to ask?
Tell me everything you know about the Mechanist.
Now there's a fascinating subject. The Mechanist. Amazingly adept at programming. A veritable genius with electronics. I'm not surprised you're interested. I've been dutifully carrying out the Mechanist's instructions to help the people of the Commonwealth for quite a long time.
Helping the people of the Commonwealth? You?
Absolutely. It's my primary directive. The Mechanist instructed me to seek out and help the people of the Commonwealth. By my calculations, the easiest way to help a human is simply to destroy it. There's no point in prolonging a laughably fragile life. It's the most efficient way to assist them. Any other effort to help tends to result in numerous complex side effects.
I don't think you understand the definition of help.
Help. To give or provide what is necessary to accomplish a task or to satisfy a need. I'm doing exactly as I was instructed. Assisting a human to the best of my abilities only affords a 25% survival rate. That means there's a 75% chance that despite my efforts, the human I'm assisting will die from something beyond my control. Therefore, it's better to hasten the human's death and put them out of their likely chance of misery than to deplete my limited time. It's actually quite elementary. But given your minimal intellect, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised you don't understand.
And you're going to be a brain pate if you don't tell me how to access the Mechanist's facility.
There's no need to be rude. It's rather simple, really. In order to gain entry to the Mechanist's facility, you're going to need to outfit one of your robots with an MSAT modification. I'll upload the plans to your Pip-Boy device. There. I've fulfilled my portion of our agreement. Perhaps I'll remain here for a while and see how things resolve between yourself and the Mechanist. Purely for my own amusement, of course. I suspect you'll have quite a tale to tell once you return. But then again, I'd be surprised if you ever return at all.
So it looks like this may all be a big misunderstanding. Like the Mechanist recording says, the Mechanist is sending his robots out into the Commonwealth to help the people of the Commonwealth. But it sounds like these delusional robots are interpreting the word help loosely, concluding that the best help they can give to humanity is to simply kill everybody to avoid their suffering. Oh dear. We need to reach the Mechanist fast so we can put an end to this confusion. With that, we complete the Headhunting quest and start the Restoring Order quest. Looks like in order to find the Mechanist, we need to install an MSAT modification into one of our robots. We'll save this step for a future video. In that video, we will track down the Mechanist and confront him or her. But we learned a lot about the Fort Hagen satellite array. Beneath the satellite was a hidden bunker, and inside they stored a whole bunch of tanks and APCs. Sadly, there was not a lot of pre-war history about the place that we learned on any of the terminals. After the Rust Devils moved in, it looks like they wiped all of the terminals and started to use them for their own purposes. But if the skeletons are any indication, it looks like many members of the military were there in the hangar working their jobs the day the bombs dropped. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the full story of the Fort Hagen satellite array and hangar. I publish a new video every single day of the week, so be sure to subscribe to get notified when I publish the follow-up video in this series. What are your thoughts on the Fort Hagen satellite array? And what are your thoughts on the Automatron DLC in general? I'm, for one, having a lot of fun. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I read all of your comments and I use them as inspiration for my future videos. And if you'd like to chat about this topic with other like-minded individuals on the Oxhorn Community Discord server, you can find an invitation link in the description below. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Patreon subscribers gain access to a private channel on my Discord server, as well as a bunch of other cool Oxhorn perks. But more than anything, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just so glad that you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.